Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. This is Vernon Jones, and you are here on the JusticeCast. Today is, what is today? Today is Thursday, August 20th, 2026. I'm here in studio with our producer, Caleb, and co producer, Itzael. And today we are bringing you more conversation about education and lifting up the conversations that folks sometimes are afraid to have. And happy to be here. It's a beautiful day in the Mile High City in the 5280, and we're glad to be here. Um, the CMAS scores came out. If you are not from Colorado, CMAS is the Colorado Measures of Academic Success, which are the state's standard base K 12 tests for math, English, science, and social studies. And the data came out, and we have seen some folks, our partners over at Chalkbeat. Caleb's going to pull up this article. Chalkbeat came out with the article um, just yesterday, and they were sharing um, some of their highlights, some of the data as they pull it together, and then they've got like a nice little search tool for you to be able to look at that. And again, the article there is Colorado's 2026 CMAS score. See how your school and district did, and you can see in some of the articles written by our friend Miss Ashmar there. Um, you can scroll up a little bit there, and what they talked about there is just like looking at. I mean, you can look at this by district, and then you can look at it by your own school. So, like, let's throw in a school. We're going to talk about some of these schools today. Now, before we do this, let me say this: we do believe that schools are more than one test score. How you evaluate a school is more than one test score, but we believe that these things matter. Like these things are measurables that we should be talking about. These are outcomes that we should be talking about regularly because this is how our state has set the bar for measuring how well our schools are doing. And again, having worked in a K-12 education and worked in high school, worked in a K-8 school, and then oversaw a number of K-5 middle schools and high schools, I know that one test score does not tell you the whole story of a school. But just like my doctor tells me when I go to the doctor at Kaiser, Vernon, these tests do tell me something, right? And so I don't want us to miss that these tests are telling us something about the educational experiences of students. And I think we need to be paying attention to it. And I think we need to respond from all levels. As we talked to you yesterday about our education compact, we need to respond from a governance level. We need to respond from a leadership level. We need to respond from a practice level. We need to respond from a parent family level. And then we need to respond from a beloved community level. So those are all five of these areas that we talked about yesterday in our compact. Today on our socials, we posted about practice creates experience, talking about what teachers and school leaders and staff must do in a school to create the great experiences for students. And so that's out there. And when we look at a test score, in my view, does not just tell me about how the students are doing. It doesn't tell me how the students are doing. It tells me how well the system is serving students, right? It tells me, are we in all five of those places doing a great job with students? And so I'm going to ask Caleb, type in Polaris, right? I heard this on the news, right? Our downtown office is just around the corner from Polaris. Now look at this. Let's see if he spelled it correctly. Let's see if he's proficient. He did. Look at that. Come on, it's AL. Give it up, man. Give it up. Give it up. Give it up. Our producer is not only the producer extraordinaire, this guy is proficient in spelling. So Polaris, right there. You can also see, so Polaris, part of the Denver County 1 DPS school, Polaris Elementary School. I believe that Polaris has ranked first or second in both English language arts and mathematics for the last couple times around, right? It's sitting to my left. He's nodding too. So, but look at this. In Polaris, English language arts, 94. That's right. Highlight that. That's worth the highlight. 94.9% of the students there are proficient or better. Proficient or better in English language arts. And if you go over to math, and I heard that I can't. We'll have to find out. I didn't. I think it said it somewhere in the article. They are 91.5% proficient or better in math, and I think this year they were second in math for the first time in a while. So this is Polaris. Now, this is a school in Denver Public Schools. Those of you who know about it, it is a school for some would say gifted students. I believe all students are gifted. I just think we just haven't discovered all the giftings because anyways, that's a whole other debate. But this school, Polaris, is set up where it has gifted students. They have, you can imagine the ecosystem of support. Go back to our compact, right? How does governance impact Polaris? How does leadership impact Polaris? How does the practice of the educators and leaders in that building impact Polaris? How do the families impact Polaris? And how does the beloved community impact Polaris? So if I was evaluating Polaris on our education compact, the education compact would say that based on these numbers, there are some great things happening at all five levels of those things that are getting you these outcomes there at Polaris. So go to Chalkbeat. You see the website there. Go to Chalkbeat. Let's play around with another one. Let's see. Do downtown Denver. There we go. So these guys are just around the corner from Polaris, right? So we got Polaris just to the what is that? What direction is that? Polaris is at the east of us, and then our neighbors right here too in our office are the downtown Denver Expeditionary School. You look at their data, and you see there's 34.7% in English language arts and 30.5% in mathematics. Again, my caveat is we understand the schools are more than just one test, but again, let's not use that to minimize that the test does tell us something, and it tells us something about a lot of different things. And so I want to again anchor us into the fact that we need to be having these conversations about data. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to just today be focused on some elementary stuff. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Caleb. We'll be back to the going back to this data around CMAS here. So we have this great stuff. We got 2024, 25 data, 25, 26 data that we're looking at, and that data is you see some growth in places. I want to give it to you this way first. We were able to break down the data by DPS region, and not just DPS. We've done this with all the districts that we work with, but again, we start with Denver Public Schools because we primarily do a lot of our work with them, the largest school district in our state, and we think it's very important that we talk about how our students being served in the largest school district in our state. So, anyways, going back to this point. So we look at by region. So District 1, which is Southeast Denver. Is that correct, Itzael? Yes, thank you very much. Southeast Denver, District 1. I'm not going to give you I'm not going to talk to you about by school. You can go on to Chalkbeat and search that, but I will give you some standouts. When we looked at this district, this part of the district, 2024, 2025, in 2024, 2025, 56% of the students in that Southeast Denver were proficient or better in English language arts. 49% of them were proficient or better in reading, right? So then I get to the 25, 26, and I see that we dropped about a percentage in Southeast Denver when it comes to reading language, English language arts, and we stayed about the same when it came to math. So a small drop, 55.3% in English language arts, stayed the same in math, about 49.8%. Okay, that's District 1. So that covers Southeast Denver. So if you're trying to figure out what Southeast Denver is, if a student goes to, and we'll give it to you by high school. So if a kid goes to, lives in the area of Thomas Jefferson or lives in the area of South High School, I just happen to be rocking the South High School Ravens today. These are not the Baltimore Ravens. Every time I wear this shirt, it's like somebody asks me if I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. And I'm like, bro, I live in Denver. I would never cheer for the Baltimore Ravens, bro. This is Bo Nix and the Broncos all day, every day. Can't wait for the Super Bowl. That's what I want people to understand. It's right? But anyways, we're rocking the South High School today. But that's Southeast Denver. So District 2. District 2. It's you live in District 2. Is that right? Yep, I'm telling everybody your business. I will give you his address if you need me to. But Itzael lives in District 2. That's Southwest Denver. Southwest Denver, if you're trying to get kind of your bearings about that, that's like Kennedy, DSST, College View, um, are the kind of high schools out there. Technically, Lincoln. Yeah, I think Lincoln. We got some folks who Lincoln's the best out there. That, has some new stuff, some new remodeling stuff done at Lincoln with the bond. So you got to check that out. But anyways, we get to so again, we talked about District One, Southeast Denver. What does that look like? When we get to District Two, Southwest Denver, this is where I want us to have real conversations. I think these are the conversations that board members should be having among each other. They should be having them with the superintendent. Nobody cares about your adult egos. We're here to serve kids. This is the stuff that we should be talking about. This is the stuff that we should be asking ourselves. Hey, are the governing decisions that we're making improving things for kids? Hey, are the leadership decisions that we're making, are they improving things for kids, right? And then schools say, are the practices that we are doing every day, are they the best things for kids? So when I get to District 2, again, I'm not going to talk to you about schools. You can go and search that. What I am going to talk to you about the average for the region, though. So at the average for the region, we actually see some good, let's go back. In 2024, 2025, the English language arts proficiency, so proficient or better, the rate was 23.78%. Okay, you heard what I right. 23.78%. And then in math, it was 20.95%. This is 24.25. Okay. In math, in English language arts this year, in the southwest part of the city, their average among all the schools in that region was 28.12. So we see about a 4% increase in proficiency in Southwest Denver. And then in math, their math went up about almost 1% proficiency across all schools. I think there are some, when we look at some, I'm trying to see if there's some that stand out as far as, gains in proficiency year over year. And for the most part, I think you look at most schools and they stayed the same. There's some schools that we should be talking about that had some concerning drops, right? I'm looking at one right here that had a 8% drop in English language arts proficiency, and that same school had about a 3% drop in math proficiency. So those are things that we should be looking at, concerned about. What are we doing at the levels of the system where we are supposed to be operating so that children thrive? We have to say, okay, what are we doing there? How did the system fail young people? Not how did young people fail, but how did the system fail young people? Because if they're supposed to thrive by design, what are we doing, right? What are we doing there? So now, again, the gap, we're just the gap between District 1 proficiency and District 2 proficiency, we're talking about, and this is the stuff that we should be talking about. We're talking about a 27% proficiency gap between District 1 and District 2 in English language arts. And we're talking about let's see, I'm doing quick math right here. It's I'm a pretty good at that math stuff. We're talking about a 28% gap when it comes to math proficiency. And that's just comparing District 1, District 2, right? Across the city, I believe if we're committed to great schools in every community, then, and we really want to talk about choice and parents really having choice, then we shouldn't see such large gaps in proficiency. Is that right? Thank you. It's AL. We agree. We agree. Caleb, you agree with that? Great. All three of us agree with that. Look at that. 3-0 vote right here. So we see those gaps, right? Again, we saw a gain of about 5% in English language arts in Southwest Denver, and we saw about a 1% gain in proficiency when it came to math, right? So then we get to District 3. So District 3 is Central Denver, and Central Denver, you've got to be thinking about technically East High School is now in Central Denver, and you also have GW, right, is now in Central Denver. So those high schools, so when you think about traditional feeders, then you can understand the elementary schools that we're looking at there. So in District 3, did see some gains of proficiency in District 3. Last year, 24-25, they were 47.59% proficient in English language arts. In math, they were 42.79% proficiency. And then now this year, we see a 50.35% in English language arts and a 44% proficiency in math. So we're looking at about a maybe a close to a 3%, almost a 3% gain proficiency in English language arts, and we're seeing about a 2% gain proficiency in math, right, in District 3. Again, you compare District 1, District 3, and you see that there is about a 5% and a 4% um, gap in proficiency between District 1 and District 3. So that gap starts to close between District 1 and District 3. Now, you probably know, if you know your geography, if you know the demographics of District 1 and District 3, there are some similarities of neighbors there, right? And so you see less of a gap between District 1 and District 3. Now, when you take District 2 and you compare District 2 and District 3, you see again that District 2 and District 3, there's about a 22% gap in proficiency from District 2 to District 3, and then there's about a 23% gap in math, right? So what we are doing in District 2, we have to pause and say, what are we not doing? How are we not meeting the need? How is the system, by design, not preparing students to achieve in Southwest Denver at the similar level that we see students in District 1 and District 3? What is going on there? And again, this is, again, a look at all 5 of those things that we talk about in our education compact. What is governance doing? What is leadership doing? What are educators and principals doing? What are families doing? And what is the overall beloved community doing to support students thriving by design in that area? So then we get to District 4. I live in District 4. So, whew, boy, when I look at the data here, there's some bright spots, definitely some growth that we see school by school, definitely some proficiency gains. There's some schools that we worked at. There's some gains there. Izzy B. We work with parents at Isabella Berg. We see some gains there. We see some gains there at A360. We see some gains at Barney Ford. In a 10% gain in English language arts proficiency at Barney Ford. That's to be applauded. I think we see about a 7% gain at Green Valley Elementary in English language arts, and we go on and on and on, school by school, right? But overall, when we look at the region of District 4 in 2024-2025, their English language arts proficiency was 32%, and math proficiency was 28%. When we get over to this year, overall for the region, 36% in English language arts and 29% in reading. I'm sorry, 29% in math. So we see a gain of about 4% in English language arts year over year and about 1% gain in math, right? You're still going back to District 1 and the comparison of how well we're doing in District 1 in this district, and you see about a region to region achievement proficiency gap of about, quick math, 19% in English language arts, and then in math, the gap's about a 10% gap. So the gap there between 1 and 4 narrows a little bit in math, but there's still that 20% or more gap in proficiency when we compare 4 and 1. Lastly, DPS as District 5. District 5, if you think about high schools in District 5, we're talking about North High School Vikings. Is Weston in 5 or is Weston 2? Weston 2, I know you knew you wanted to claim that one. But you've got, so the North High School, you think about that, North High School, and all the schools, again, that feeder there. So when we look at the region of District 5, last year, District 5 was at 33% in reading, so English language arts, and in math, it was 29%. This year, they were 37.5% in English language arts, and they were 31% in math. So in District 5, we saw a gain of about right at 4% in English language arts. And then in um, math, we saw about a 2% gain overall in student proficiency. So overall, there's some gains in proficiency, which are very important. I know that when we talk about how well students are doing, folks want to lean in, and we'll talk about this at another day, but we'll talk about the state ratings and all that, and what is really green and what is really green and what's really not green, right? Because for us, it's student proficiency is what we should be monitoring, right? Students have to grow, but students also have to gain, right? So you grow and you gain, right? So we want to see both growth, but we also want to see growth that leads to proficiency gaining, right? And so we definitely have seen some incremental growth in some of the schools in all of the regions. As you heard, most of the regions had some type of um, small lift in both English language arts and in reading, but English language arts and math, I'm sorry. And at the same time, I think we have to be able to have the tough conversation, right, Itzel? We have to have the tough conversation to say that a school with the proficiency of 11.4% in English language arts and 5.9% proficiency in math, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? How is the system supporting students in that school to thrive? Because we cannot say that 11.4% proficiency in English language arts and 5.9% proficiency in math is thriving. And again, that test data is not simple. It's not talking to us about the kids. It's talking to us about the system that is around them, the system that is supporting them to thrive, the system that is ensuring that they are able to get what they need to be able to achieve the outcomes that all children can achieve. I'm crazy enough to believe that all kids can produce the proficiency that we see at Polaris. Okay, let me see. Both of my producers here are nodding their heads. They agree, right? I believe that all kids can have the outcomes that we see at a school like Polaris, and I think that we have to look at what is supporting those students at Polaris to achieve those outcomes and what is not supporting students in other places to similarly achieve those outcomes, right? And I'm not saying that every kid that goes to Polaris is like every kid that goes to Colfax and Columbian or Cheltenham or whatever. All schools, all kids, different communities, different, all that. But the ability, the potential, the uh, you know what I'm saying, it's like we should be able to expect Polaris like outcomes at every school in our district, right? And so, we have to have those tough conversations. We have to have those tough conversations to say, hey, bro, we cannot continue to turn our eyes and our ears to a school that has 7.6 proficiency in reading, English language arts. Because if you have 7.6% of kids that are proficient, let's do the math really quick. 7.6 are proficient. That means 92.4% are not, right? And in that same space, 6.8% are proficient in math. So that means that 93.2% of kids are not. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an injustice. That is proof that the system is designed for some kids to thrive and some kids to barely, if survive. And that's not okay, right? While we can find things to celebrate, look, I can find a whole bunch of reasons for us to celebrate in this data that I'm looking at. I can find you the growth. I can look at a school and say, man, look at that. Edison year over year has maintained its level. I see that Edison is like not, they did 3% gain in English language arts. They did about a 5% jump in math, and I can say, oh, yes, worth celebrating, right? But when we look at the other schools that are not at a level that is acceptable, it is again, we need to look at the system that is around those schools and around those students who deserve to thrive by design and not by chance. And so, this data will be we will be unpacking it, and we will be talking about it and over for the next week, because we are just tapping into the elementary school today. And like I said, we're just tapping in. Like, you can go and you can do your own dive at the Chalkbeat link, but and if you want, we'll figure out how we can put up this side by side comparison that we're looking at, that we do as an internal staff. But look, folks, we gotta be honest. Let's have the conversation. Let's have the conversation. Let's say what is happening at Polaris. And I'm not talking, I'm talking about what is happening at Polaris. Again, with our education compact, how is governance helping Polaris? How is leadership helping Polaris? How is practice helping Polaris? How are families helping Polaris? And how is community helping Polaris? How is that ecosystem working together to ensure the outcomes that we are seeing at a school like Polaris? And there's other stars too within the district. Polaris was just called out in this article, and I saw another article from another media group that also called out Polaris. I want to go to when you look at a school like, let's go to District 4, you look at a school like William Roberts. William Roberts has 80.7% of its students are proficient in English language arts, and in math it's 82%, right? So Itayel said something great before we got into this, and we were looking at the data, and he was like, okay, I want to see the disaggregated data that tells us which students, when we are in, and we were talking about Polaris specifically, we want to say which students at Polaris are not being served well. Because even though there's a 90 something percent at Polaris, a 94% and a 91%, there's still 5.1% in English language arts that are not there. And then math, there's about 8.5% that are not there. So what's the disaggregated data say? Who is not being served well, supported well at a Polaris, right? So at every school, we have things that we can dive deeper in and say, hey, we're not at 100%. How do we get there? How do we understand what our students need? How do we understand all that kind of stuff? How do we move, right? But we cannot continue, hear this well, we cannot continue to act like this data does not matter. We cannot continue to act like this data does not tell us something. We cannot continue to point the blame at students. We cannot continue to say, well, those kids or that neighborhood. No, we have to look at, again, the whole system to say, okay, how do we get there in one space and we're not getting there in another space? And look, be mad at me if you want, but I'm never going to be okay with looking at data that says a school only has 7% proficiency in math. No, I'm not gonna be okay with that. I'm not gonna be okay with, especially in communities that historically and presently are failed by design. I'm not gonna be okay with that. I'm not gonna be quiet about that. And when we look at the disaggregated data, you can bet I'm gonna be louder than I am right now, because I know that the kids that we're gonna see being failed are the kids that Itzael was talking about that have continued to be failed, specifically in areas like Southwest Denver and areas like Northeast Denver, and that is not okay, and that has to change. And I understand there's folks. Look, I've been there. There's folks out there working hard. There's folks out there doing the thing that they need to do, and we definitely need to speak to that. I got some comments here on this that says it would be great to see what strategies are working to increase proficiency, also what is needed to have the growth that results in the majority proficiency. Most definitely, we definitely want to. We need to be sharing strategies. We need to be sharing what is working. We need to be looking at, again, how is governance? I'm telling you, and you think, oh, the governance doesn't impact. Yes, it does, right? How governance operates matters. How leadership operates matters. How the practices matter. Like, I wonder, and this is just an assumption, because I have not visited Polaris in a while, But I just wonder, how are kids greeted when they come in? What is the disposition towards the kids that go to Polaris? What is the disposition towards their parents? Right? How do people? What do they feel like when they come into that place? Right? I mean, all of that matters, right? What does the facility look like? Right? What tools and opportunities are available to them? All of that matters. And I guarantee you that if we evaluated where we are seeing success, right, we would not be surprised that we where we see systemic failure. Let me just say that. We would not be surprised where we are seeing systemic failure. So again, this data to me is not, oh my God, these kids are not smart. That's not ever a fact. The fact is that children are brilliant, right? The fact is that all children are always learning. All children are learning from us, whether they are brilliant or if they are going to be, subjugated by a system that wants them subjugated, right? Or we are going to speak to the potential and the promise in every child, and we're going to do that in every interaction and every instruction and every opportunity, right? We're going to do that consistently because we believe in every kid, right? So I appreciate this. I love it when data comes out because we can't just simply just move on feelings, and we can't just move and say, well, that school's always been and that school's always been there. Well, you know what? The thing is it working for kids? Is it achieving the outcomes that we're supposed to be for kids, right? That's the bottom line, folks. We have to push away from nostalgia. We have to push away from um, this comfortability that we have, and we just can't have tough conversations. What? Well, let me just say, you're gonna have the tough conversation now. You're gonna have it later, right? Eventually, failing kids is going to bite you in the behind, right? Dismissing that you got kids who are not receiving the academics that they need, not receiving the equitable supports that they need, not receiving the mental health and wellness supports that they need, and you've got the same thing. Staff, not so. It's a snowball effect, right? Everything that we see, it's a systemic failure by design, and we believe at FaithBridge that even though it was designed that way, it can be redesigned. And so we're going to be talking about that, all this data stuff for a while, and we hope you will get online. I mean, I'm looking at stuff like, bro, I'm back in District 4, at the schools that are near where I live, and I can't be happy with a school with 14% proficiency in English language arts and 6.3% proficiency in math. It makes my heart hurt, right? And it makes me say, okay, what are we not doing? Just from a position of community, what could we be doing better for that building? What could we be doing better to support them and help them understand that hey, we're here to help, right? And I say this to my former colleagues, some friends can still let me be called a colleague, right? Who are leading schools, man. You can't do this in isolation. That's some of the problem too. Like, you cannot do this work in isolation. And if you are not leaning in to partnership, if you're not leaning in to learn, as some of the commenters said online today, if you are not leaning in to learn best practices from your friends. As somebody joked, the best thing we did in education is like to steal all the good stuff from each other, right? And so, look, go find out what folks are doing, right? If you see a school that had a 12% gain in proficiency with a student group that you are struggling with, that is dealing with the similar stuff, call them, get together with them. Like we will broker that, right? But we can't just be okay with these numbers, because it's heartbreaking, because when I see these numbers, I see kids. When I see these numbers, I see futures. When I see these numbers, I see young people who are going to be frustrated. And we're just looking at elementary school data. I see young people who are in elementary school who are going to be frustrated middle school students who then are going to become discipline issues, not because they have discipline issues, but because we continue to pass them on without ensuring that they had the academic wherewithal that they deserve, the social emotional tools that they needed, all the things, right? And we just pass them on. I mean, come on, I cannot be okay with an 8.9% proficiency in reading in my community. And that's not an indication of the kids. Again, that is saying the system is failing them and we can no longer be satisfied with that. This is the kind of stuff that should keep board members up at night, right? This is the kind of stuff that should keep a superintendent up at night. These are the things that you should be arguing about, right? These are the things you should be fussing about, right? These are the things that should be at the forefront of your discussions, should be how are the children? And based on this data, we got a lot of work to do. Definitely some stuff to celebrate, right? We will never back away from that. There's definitely some stuff to celebrate because every day there are teachers, there are students, there are families, there are leaders of our district, there are folks on our board who do good works for students, and we see some of those gains. But ladies and gentlemen, we can't be satisfied with 18% proficiency in reading and 13% proficiency in math. No, no, ma'am, no, sir, no way is that okay, right? I don't care how long your school's been open. I don't care how long you've been the principal there. If you are rocking a data point that says 18% proficiency in reading and 13% proficiency in math, you need to be saying, what are we doing? There has to be a level of urgency that says, and when I say we, again, come out of your bubble of your school and start talking to all parts of the community and say, okay, hey, how do we move together for students? Yeah. So, whew, man, I need a drink of water. Need a drink of water from my Frank and Rose down the street here. We appreciate them. A lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Boof! I just saw another one. It's giving me heartburn right now. 6.5% proficiency in reading, 8% proficiency in math. It's in my neighborhood, bro. It's in my neighborhood. It's. I want to know. I want to know what we're doing. I want to know what is my school board member doing. I want to know if Director Hunter knows that data, and I want to know if Director Hunter is asking questions about that data that says how can my governing help that improve. I wonder if when she has a one-on-one meeting with the superintendent, if they're talking about that data. That's what I want to know. I want to know if we're concerned about kids or this is about adult egos and adult agendas. Because let me tell you something. If this is the report card, just think, if these scores are really the report card of the ecosystem, if this is the report card of how the adults are serving the children, then there are a lot of places that we are not serving the children well. And that should push us all to say, okay, we got to do something differently, quickly. Because guess what? You only get third grade one time, unless you're ITSIL. You took third grade twice. Is that right? you did. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about this data, and if you want to come on and talk about this data with me, hey, you're invited. You definitely can come on in, but be ready. We're not gonna have any excuse making. We're not gonna have any blame game, but we are gonna have his ownership game. We're gonna own it. We're gonna own it, and we're gonna say, hey, if I'm a board director, I have a governance role. If I am a superintendent, I have a leadership role. If I am a school professional, a principal, a teacher, a staff member, I have a practice role. If I am a family member, I have a role. And if I am the beloved community, I have a role. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So if you want to come on in and chat with me, come on in, but bring your ownership. Because just like I'm owning this data as a member of my community, as I'm owning this data as former leader in this space, we got to own it. And we got to say, hey, we got to do better by kids by design, because they should not be left to chance. They should be left in systems that want to serve them well so that they can thrive, learn in great schools, and achieve their hopes. That's what we're all about here at Faith Bridge, and we hope you will join us to do that. Hey, I got some exciting news before we get off the air today. We had a great gift that was given to us, $50,000 gift, an individual gift that was given to us. We are appreciative of it. Laura Givens was someone who believed in us, believed in the mission that we are trying to achieve here at Faith Bridge to create a just world where all children thrive, learn in great schools, and achieve their hopes. And we are trying to get this gift $50,000 up to $200,000 because we have some other folks who say, hey, Vernon, if you can go and raise another, I had a group, if you can raise another 50, I'll give you this. And if you can raise another 50, I'll give you that. So we have the opportunity as we are raising this money to turn this $50,000 gift into a $200,000 gift that will help us to continue to mobilize our speak pillars, which are system leaders, parents, educators, advocates, and kids, to get out there and co-create a world, a just world where children thrive, learn in great schools, and achieve their hopes. So we need you to be the bridge with us, to be the bridge that begins with us. We cannot do this without you. We are so appreciative of our funders, some of our foundations who support us, and the individuals like Laura Givens and her family who support us. We cannot do this work without people who believe in the world that we are trying to co-create. And so we need your help. There's going to be a QR code that's about to come up as we get off the air today. There's going to be a QR code that comes up, and we just need you to click that QR code, and we want you to make a donation to support the work that we're doing at Faith Bridge. We have until October the 3rd to hit our funding goal for this, and we believe that we can, and we believe that we will because we believe in you, right? We believe in the power of our beloved community to rock with us to co-create a just world where all children thrive, learn in great schools, and achieve their hopes. We'll be back again tomorrow to unpack some more CMAS data. We'll be focusing on middle schools and, again, talking to you with DPS. We're going to throw a little bit of APS flavor in there as well, and might even tiptoe into our friends in Adams 14 to talk about what's going on there. But definitely going to looking at some more data tomorrow and unpacking it. And we want you to join us here live tomorrow. And that's it. I'm Vernon Jones here on the JusticeCast. All children deserve to thrive, learn in great schools, and achieve their hopes, not by chance, but by design.